So the thinking place is oftentimes it keeps us chained. We're free to daydream anything. But I start to think, I start to worry about this and worry about that, and obsess about this and obsess about that. And if I go into my feelings, obviously, there's a lot of movement. In fact, I may not be even feeling this, or this is going kind of nuts. And right now we have the social distancing, we have the pandemic, we have over 2,000 deaths a day, and we're verging on 200,000 confirmed cases a day. So that's all this way. Now, if I start to daydream, I can actually obsess over it, which means that's not a daydream. I start to think about images that are really negative. That's a daydream. Sunny day, Kauai. And if the dream has a different sense to it, it's kind of like all of a sudden, I start to quiet. So yeah, I'm still thinking, but I might be thinking more around what's going on and what to do, because ostensibly that's a vacation. But I could carry a lot of worries and regrets and suspicions and whatever it is with me. But if you're in that daydreaming, that beautiful sunny day at the beach, that might quiet down. Feeling, I don't know, just, if you can just sort of every once in a while, just say, okay, I'm going to daydream about my favorite vacation place. It starts to kind of, instead of I feel this, I feel that, which is tied to the dialogue, right? I start to kind of settle underneath that. Now, this is an interesting one, because a lot of times sense field images come from a different direction. The daydream's up here. That's interesting. What I'm kind of getting is more like, we're standing in the ocean. I'm kind of feeling the current. So in some sense, it's not just a daydream. I can actually feel. And what I find is my thoughts, all of a sudden, when I shift here, the thoughts start to, the ordinary thoughts, they just start to shift a bit. In fact, I start to almost experience that I'm there on that beach. And sometimes when you start to work the under, things like, for example, there's a fear with water you're going to drown, or there's a fear that you're going to be pulled under with an undertow, or there's a nasty shark waiting for you somewhere. Those are fears, and of course that's it's up here first, and it starts to work down here. But you got to be easy with that. And so sometimes the actual sense feel comes from more the under area. And as I kind of relax a bit, it's almost like I kind of shift through the fears, so the fears are a certain way. And if I can just sort of settle a bit, I'll settle through them. And it's interesting, for example, that the whole thing was like sun. And now the whole thing is more like in the sunset. And the sunset gives you a type of, a perspective. There's light, there's dark, there's day, there's night. And, if you ask me, for example, what I prefer, sunrise, sunset, is definitely sunset. That's, in Don Juan terms, that's my time of power, is that time, the twilight area. And so the feel experience was not just a daydream. So you got to go a little deeper. You get things like the ocean itself and the fears, like I can't breathe in the ocean. And, I start to panic. It's like, it's almost like the movie, you're with a magical mermaid. And when you're with her, you can breathe in the ocean. Just kind of like an ally protector. All of a sudden, I kind of start to settle in. And there's kind of a beauty to that sort of more under experience. And sometimes you'll kind of find, for example, like there's buried treasure there, sunken treasure. But you're in the ocean at that level is kind of a magical realm. So the treasure, you don't get, I got this treasure. It's just like, treasure is the experience. And whether it's a chest of gold or a chest of gems, whatever it is, it starts to superimpose itself. You're kind of a transparency that can feel experience, not just see. And I kind of note that all the crazy thoughts and the feelings tied to those thoughts, they just kind of dissolve. And I'm kind of here in a kind of a deeper, calmer, actually very magical place. And sometimes you don't get the magic. What you do is before the magic, you kind of get the push of that realm. It's like an abyss, an ocean, I'm going to drown. So you got to settle a bit. And oftentimes, an ally will come in to help you there. Like for me, the magical mermaid. When she's around, I can breathe. After a while, I'm kind of right down there. I don't need that anymore. I might still be with that ally, but so the I goes from a bit more here. There's not an I. It's more what we call an I self, going deeper towards its own roots. And so these are things, for example, that we used to work on an awful lot in the 70s, 80s. So, it was interesting. I found this yesterday. I was thinking, oh yeah, I've been thinking about this a little bit. Okay, let's see. Anybody with a question on any of that? So it's actually pretty good. It's almost like a little scroll, daydream. Think, feel. The sense field is a different location. It's more kind of the depth of it, the roots of it. So, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a nice little, I can post this somewhere if people are interested in it. Okay. I'll put it on Facebook. I think I actually have it in the computer. So anybody with any questions on that?
It makes sense actually for an artist also. Yeah. I've found that when I'm working hard on something, then pathways open up.
Yeah.
And I just told Debbie that she's my magical mermaid.
That's good. Yeah. You might not be able to, the ender can open up as an abyss sometimes because, it's immense. And in kind of our more human level, that's kind of scary. So you kind of, oftentimes, if you just are easy there's an ally that shows. And so for me, the magical mermaid, if all of a sudden, I'm in deep space vacuum, I'm gonna just explode or die there in a couple of seconds, So, that whole thing is like, wow, that's another fear, right? But if I kind of settle a little bit, Supergirl shows up with a space helmet. And again, as you do that, you go, okay. And then what happens, you get a little deeper in the experience of it. You don't need the space helmet. But that's kind of a trick of the trade. Because a lot of times when something is really immense, it's actually really splendid. And there's a difference, because a lot of times we kind of get it, with the feel experience of it. And sometimes this is so vivid, we just go all the way there. But I think what this is just a kind of a map. In other words, if you're just in the upper awarenesses of it, you're kind of in the daydream state. Doesn't mean it's wrong at all. Okay, beautiful sunrise or beautiful sunny day on the beach. See, I can get lost there, just drifty, but you start to realize, if you're there, you may have a lot of thoughts. First time I went to Kauai, it was 1996. And, one thing that struck me about that place was, you kind of meditate, you go into a finer dimension. When I was there that first time, the outer and the inner were one. I didn't have to go into meditative state to get finer. It was like whatever was going on out there was the same as what was going on inside. All right. So, that was, so for me, it's always been a magical place or a power spot. Okay. But that area where, okay, it's here, but then there's this here. And when I'm here, a lot of what keeps me here is kind of the interior dialogue, And then, really, it came to my feelings, which are kind of about worrying about this or fear. And of course, we just rebound here. But if we all of a sudden start to settle a bit, and sometimes you get a push because, there are vast forces, but you just continue to settle. Right about here, I kind of get the roots. It's almost like not just the image of here, that bright day, but the feel of standing kind of in the shallow ocean where the tide is going in and out, your feet start to sink in the sand. So it becomes, all of a sudden, see, that's kind of a feel experience. And then that's good, but sometimes what happens is you get a push, like all of a sudden, that's fine. And all of a sudden, you're going to feel like there's an undertow or a shark or you're going to drown. You're all of a sudden, you're in the ocean. You don't have any scuba equipment, or you don't have a boat, or you're alone or something like that. So you got to be very easy there. Because this is a meditation space. I don't think all of a sudden the evil king of the sea is beaten Aquaman and oceans are going to drown us all so they can reclaim the planet. I mean, that's a pretty good plot for a movie, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's meditation space. But what happens a lot of times is the deeper under shows, there's a push. So one of the things is after a while, you realize, well, it's a meditation space, right? But when that's pushing, this can get a certain thing and this can kind of go this way. So you just got to be easy. Relax, open. And as you kind of start to do that, the more of the depth shows, but it shows more as for example, okay, I'm on solid ground here, even though there's water. My fantasies can go crazy right there. And so, a lot of times what happens is people, when they run into that, they kind of rebound back here and here. Okay, this started out so beautiful. What happened? It's kind of like the dream becomes a nightmare, But a lot of times in nightmares, you got to realize that everything is something, your subconscious is trying to tell you something. So there's nothing wrong with a nightmare. You just got to look at it and go, okay, That's that archetype wanting to get my attention. And so Carl Jung, for example, he had this practice called active dreaming, active imagination. And what that was you create your own dream. We've been doing a little bit of that lately, with some of the process work. But, one of the things here is you just sort of settle. And I'm getting something like sand and water. Okay. And, I could be thinking or daydreaming, but it actually is the beginnings right here of a process of what Jung might call an active imagination. Positive part of that. I love it. That's my beach in Kauai. Whoa. But there's always kind of an underside to it. And that underside is it's kind of crazy. Like thoughts come into my head, like, how am I going to pay for this? And all of a sudden, see, this goes crazy. But one of the reasons it does is because I'm really at a very important gateway. So if I can just sort of settle with it, what happens is the experience, becomes much more. Like, for example, I kind of get that real place, in the sunset, where you can actually look at the sun, as opposed to like, I'm going to stare at the sun and go blind. I can kind of soak there. And, there's the beginnings of night, okay? But on the other hand, there's that brilliance of the sunset. And I'm still there kind of on that beach. If I check my thoughts, they're not in that, how I pay for this place, or what am I going to do when I get back to face situation A, B, C. It's not there. If I can get in the feel experience of the moment, Well, since I said that when he got up, he would just sort of pray to the east, breathe the sun, be grateful for his life, spend a little time in what he called prayer. He said if he didn't do that, the day was not quite as good for him. Okay. So even now, there's kind of the capacity to use what Jung might call active imagination. So anyway, let's take. It's a lot of O-sensei stuff. I'm not saying, the Phantom Swordsman or the Golden Vapors or anything else were imagination at all. There were things I think that he saw because he was able to go into the realms of the sense field. Okay? Those are real. When we start to make a connection to more the root half of ourselves, and then we realize there's in a lot of ways that's a prototype for whatever reality we're in. Okay, so let's go into the other room. And so I'm going to do, somehow I got shifted out of it. Spotlight. Come on. What happened here? Host me. Okay, so we're back. Yes. That works. That works. Yeah. And that's should just be adjusted a little bit to there. And the things we can do. So I'm gonna just put this down for a second. Let's just do just from here, just easy back and forward. Okay. Now, I feel the surface. Okay. My body starts to get a little more used to the surface. Pretty nice. No roll. And I'm feeling this thing. Now we're just going to see if we can start to get into what we call the sense feel. Okay? Back there, sense feeling. It's not feeling.
Ashton, not so loud. I can't hear Sensei.
So I feel earth, lawn. Okay, that's a sense feel place because this is a rug. Okay, and the lawn is very lush. It's a nice day, much warmer than our physical day. So I'm just going back and forth. And there's the feel experience of what is there. So again, that's a sense feel. Okay, all right. Anybody, if you're rolling with me, because, okay, I know the roll, I feel pretty good, but there's that other thing, that sense feel. I was getting kind of that lawn. Anybody want to share what they might be getting right there? It doesn't have to be anything fantastic. See what I mean? We're just saying, okay, there's no lawn here, but all of a sudden on a sense feel basis, there's lawn. Anybody? Sometimes, there's an area where, like the mind kind of locks. It's called mind lock. And this is kind of right there where I'm looking for something to say, just, but on the other hand, the experience speaks through you. Boom. I'm not the lawn, but I'm taking that role on a lawn surface. Anybody want to share anything?
Nothing profound here. I had a lot of distractions from the kids, but
The distractions. That's the world. The Hindus, they call it Maya, and it's very real in its own way, right? The Buddhists call it samsara.
yeah, I'm deep in samsara right now. But yeah, I did enjoy just rolling, right? Because we do that so rarely without.
Well, that's what I call the feel area. That's good. Now the sense feel is a little different. Okay. Sense feel is a little different. So think something like a roll. Okay. Any motion, I'm raising my arm. I'm getting better at raising my arm. I feel better raising my arm. Now, from that sense feel area, the arm kind of floats up. right? But it's time-lapse photography, boom. That's different than Mike trying to do this faster, boom. So I'm kind of feeling that even though the body is here, there's a space that permeates the body, that supports the body. And the body feels pretty balanced, but it also feels lighter, freer. That's what I call sense feel. Okay? Let's try that. So let me go back here so I make sure I'm. So you can take either arm. Okay, now I'm just going to raise the arm. Okay. I could do this. I'm going to get tired. I'm going to get bored doing it. I learned to raise the arm better. But it's a repetitive movement, and I'm kind of going. My shoulders are already getting kind of tired. Now, to kind of settle a little deeper into the sense feel. And again, I get that feeling that the arm is kind of floating up. And there's a space, it's like water, you know, water's rising. Boom, water's draining. That there's almost like a field supporting that. And you have the power of like time-lapse photography. In a couple of seconds, a seed goes to a redwood. You know, I might want to even start to even it out. Image I get, you know, which I like. I love eagles. They saved everything in the Lord of the Rings. The eagles came. But the birds are kind of fun, interesting because they're grounded in air. But the feeling of it is, you know, the space is supporting you, both in an up and a down. For example, right here, I'm not just working the arms, I sort of want to move the whole body. Okay, so that's the sense feel of it. Okay? So anybody with an observation, we're saying that we think, we feel, we sense feel. Now, for example, daydream. I'm daydreaming I'm a bird. That's fun. But the sense feel image, think you must become it. Not that I'm going to fly away, but in the sense feel of it. Yeah. And then the quality of the motion is different. Like I could do this for a long time without getting tired because there's kind of a wonder of fascination. Once I settle past, maybe there's a bump going from daydream to think to feel to sense feel. There's kind of a magical quality there. Okay. Okay. Anybody, anything to share? Any comments? So you can take almost anything. And, you know, to some degree, what you're doing, you're taking an ordinary movement and transforming it. Like, for example, I start doing it with the wrist, all of a sudden, I start to raise a little bit on my toes instead of my heel down. So it's almost like there's a beat or a pulse or a breath in that field of energy. In fact, one of the reasons I like Tai Chi, that's something I could do when I first started it. There wasn't much Aikido around, maybe once, twice a week. It's not a lot, but I could do the Tai Chi. Yeah, every day. Because it just took me and a little patience and space. Okay? Anybody with a question, comment right there? Okay, let's yeah, one of the things about the sense field place, okay, is that there's a reluctance sometimes to verbalize it because, you know, I don't want to appear stupid or, you know, so-and-so is getting that, but I'm getting this. You know, it's almost like if you're not getting anything, you know, that's something that you verbalize. I would just say that, you know, it's almost like, you know, you're used to playing checkers and all of a sudden you start to get an interest in chess. It's a different game. Okay, like here, for example, right here. It's almost like there's a heartbeat or breath, a beat to that energy field. There's that feel. And of course, I'm moving the arms in that field. But after a bit, there's a pulse or beat in that field. I notice things like my breathing. I'm in that place where I'm not thinking about breathing. I'm feeling the breath. Yes, breathing is going on, but breath is going on. And here within that field, those energies of in and out, they start to create a circle spiral. Okay? And for whatever reason, I get the feeling, and you know, I don't sit stays all that much, although I've been trying to, because every time I go down there, I go, ouch. All of those things, that pulse, the circle spirals, it's the root. All that's going on in my thinking, my daydreaming, my feeling. Right down here, we're picking a kind of a sort of core root ground. Bruce Lee said, he said, the branches of a tree surface knowledge. The real knowledge is in the root. So if I check, if I was going to do a meditation, meditation would be sort of grounded with being with that root. And I sort of get the feeling, you know, like there's certain things you heard about, like roots and trees, but you know, it's kind of like the fungi actually connect the trees, root system to root system. So it's almost like in that under realm, there's an outreach, there's a communication. And you know, if I think stuff I know, I may have some feelings about it, or I might feel stupid talking about it, but just settling in. So, you know, I play games like this. In fact, I'm a lot healthier mentally, spiritually, when I play these games, because they get me out of all the paranoid fears and everything right here. Because there's a sense of wonder here. And that wonder is a more magical feeling. Okay? Okay. Does anybody comment there? I mean, almost anything can be a way of kind of connecting. I mean, the sense field area is a very important one. If you talk about reading all of those sensei's experiences, golden vapors, phantom swordsman, things like that, they're all sense field. That was his, you know, that was his sense field led him to a relationship with the forces, energies, the kami. And if he just stayed ordinary, it wouldn't have done much. Anybody with a question or? Okay.
I have a weird
sure.
bit of wisdom to share.
Yeah, sure.
So I have this coffee mug with a wizard on it.
And
there's a quote that comes with it. I don't know where the quote comes from. The mug is based on a role-playing game, so maybe that. But it says, "The world is full of magic things waiting patiently for our senses to grow sharper."
Yeah.
And that seems like to dovetail into what you're saying. I mean, it's it's literary, but there's I think some truth to it that the like what you sensed when you were in Hawaii wasn't necessarily what anyone else would sense, but it was still there to be said. It was just waiting for you to notice.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, I mean, you talk about finer dimensions. I think Nadeau Sensei talks about finer dimensions, and presumably the opposite are coarser dimensions somewhere out there. But I think being, dimensions, you're still where you are, right? And so it's not like you're traveling to Jupiter or something there. It's all right here, right? So it's a matter of perception. Anyway, these are the thoughts that are bouncing through my head.
If you're going to write a convincing story in sci-fi where you do travel to Jupiter, you might get it sold. You see what I mean? Yeah, there's an area where the other realms, they kind of impact us, whether we know it or not. Okay, so the sense field, okay, is actually pretty major. For example, if we just do this crazy thing, we put the hands here. Okay, well, I'm sticking my hands here. What are we doing this for? Well, all of a sudden I feel something like a current or magnetism between the hands. All right. And I don't know. I mean, there's so many different ions that, are in our body, charged particles, whatever. Why in the world shouldn't there be a magnetism? But on the other hand, if you just say, what do you feel? It's like a magnetism or a field. That's a sense field. Now, what else do I feel? Well, I feel kind of vibrations or emanations within that field. I feel that field can go denser and it can get larger and finer. And conversely, that finer feeling can go into a very small space, okay? And you may pick up things like all of a sudden the particles in that field, they start to sparkle. Which of course puts me in a much better mood than a dour, what's our president trying to do sort of place, which happens when all I read is the news feed. That there's this dimension of wonder and magic and even power that's at our fingertips that we never use or tap it so little. Okay? Now, so that's the sense field. Sometimes when you come up with a word to explain an experience, and it's not just a word out there, but a word from in here, that's a sense field. What's the texture of that field? Well, it feels like suspended particles that kind of sparkle, like all the particles talk. And and so that my body is superimposed here, and I don't know at some point whether or not there are waves in that field or whether or not my motion is creating waves in that field. There's a real relationship I have with that energy field. And if I kind of go this way, the field supports me by creating kind of an energy ground root. Or conversely, by going this way, I create the field to create the feeling of an energy ground. At that point, I'm here, the field's out there. There's a relationship. Do I feel almost like there's a pulse in that field, a heartbeat? Okay. Now, am I picking that up, or in some sense, by moving the hand here, am I creating back that pulse, that beat? You see? So those are things that you can play with a little bit. Surprisingly enough, these days people are just so locked that I mean, why do people play video games? They get you out of this, but they kind of put you up here and out there in that. And this is almost like you're in the best video game of all, which is the universe, which was O-sensei's video game. Okay? And there's a game and your ability to play the game. Okay? So Jung might call that active imagination. The Do-sensei calls it sense field. O-sensei had names for it, like the hidden realm and the divine realm. Okay? They're very similar. Don Juan, there's ordinary reality, which is where we are most of the time. And there's non-ordinary or extraordinary reality. Boom, boom, boom. So now what we can do, let's and I'm choosing this because this is usually associated with weight. It's very tangible. If I'm swinging a sword kind of from a daydream place, it's very obvious. And then, I may know all the particulars, grip, and I feel like I'm doing a lot if I'm swinging a lot. Okay, but there's that motion. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so I do that cut quite a bit. So what I'd like you to do, you can use a Joe or a staff for this, but if you have a bowcan, and there's bigger cuts, boom, or boom. But there's also, see, I raise about third eye level, and boom, a cut. Just past the waist. O-sensei said, strike like thunder. Boom. Okay. Okay. So everybody get a couple swings in. Okay, a couple things I notice when I do this. My pulse rate goes up, which means I'm getting some exercise. I'm diabetic, so I swing because it lowers the blood sugar. But I also notice something else. Even though the pulse rate goes up, I'm still in a deeper place with breathing, sort of like breath. So, if I'm going like this, my breathing starts to kind of get higher. Okay, like I'm out of breath trying to run. All right, boom. Okay, so I noticed that about the breathing. Okay, anybody notice anything about just swinging? Because that's pretty physical. We're talking about other realms, and all of a sudden we're picking up. It doesn't get more physical in Aikido than swinging the sword. It really doesn't. Okay, anybody? Cliff, it looked like you were about to say something.
It's just, I'm trying to get to this sense feel, but my wife scheduled a workman to come right now, and so like it's all this distracted, the kids and the workman and all this is distracting me, and I'm just doing my best to just focus on even the basic level of what we're doing here.
Yeah, okay, yeah. A lot of
getting
what'll happen is at a gateway, important one, the world goes nuts. Chaos happens. That's where it's just you settle anyway. Yeah, and it's hard. So going back to a basic is never wrong. Okay, anybody else? Well, I'm going to go back to the screen here. So a couple of things that happened for me. So I'm going to now I start to think about doing the movement, but on the other hand, we're talking about sense feel. And kind of unrelated, I check my body. And it's almost like all the cells in the body, not just the organs or whatever, the cells feel alive. They're kind of starting to vibrate. And all I've been doing is this cut. Okay. Notice that feeling I was getting sitting about root is much more, and the word I would call it is much more intense. Ground. Okay. Okay. There's a thought about the swing, but that pulse or okay. Now that pulse, I can fall asleep here. This is the daydream place. But that pulse, now right here in the matter dimension, it's just like this. So I'm swinging the sword. But if I can pick up that pulse, boom, boom, and I pick it up again, feet, boom, there's the base, boom, and I feel that pulse, not up here, but core. There's that beat, and boom, boom, boom. Then I begin to get maybe what those senses are about: strike like thunder, strike like thunder, strike like thunder, strike like thunder. And so I use that because a lot of times, yes. Yeah, Jack is here. Just a second. I'm doing a Zoom martial arts class. This is about insurance examination. Or is it about Social Security or something? You don't answer them, but yeah. Spam call. See, that's what happens. The world tends to bug you when you're close to something. Breakthrough goes nuts. But it's to kind of stay on course. So for me, the cut's a good one because, you know, we can get into the daydream of it. We can learn more about it. We can feel good when we do that. And we can have these sense-feel experiences. But how does that boom translate? Boom, right now. Boom. How does it translate right this moment? So for me, I use that cut quite a bit. And I notice, you know, when I'm doing it, I check the body. Yeah, if the heartbeat starts to beat, it's a workout. But the breathing stays calmer, deeper. And the cells, that's the organs. You know, since they talk about the organs of the body, you know, heat, light, power, for me, the cells start to kind of get this sort of alive vibe. And you could say that vibration turns into heat or light, and boom, you know, that area right there, and it strikes like thunder. But it's not like, I'm going to strike like thunder. It's like, boom, that motion, boom, boom, that thunder beat, boom, 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 boom. Or you can ease off. What I notice right here, for example, is that right here, the thing bounces up, or then boom, right? It kind of goes back and forth this way. But a good one, boom, that bounces, boom, boom. The sense field dimension, the vibration up and out, boom, goes back to that, boom. Or Toy Sensei's weight underside. And Nado Sensei's base. Whatever you want to call it. O Sensei's land of the roots. Okay? My much less spectacular version of it. Anybody with that one? So when you swing, that, you know, for me, it's good because a lot of times you can have these fantastic images, but it doesn't translate here. And here, that cut gives me a chance to, you know, it's like, boom, bring it into being here, boom. You know, not just have some great ideas for a script, but boom, translates into, here's the script. Okay, which is hard. Well, these days, what can we bring into being during this pandemic? It's hard. But you can start to swing the sword a bit. And the misogi is kind of, you know, being able to take those finer dimensions and boom, bring them into being somewhat here in a grounded way. And the sense feel is very important for that. Okay, anybody else with a question or comment on the sword cut? That's you know, one of my major things. I mean, I should get up in the morning and not swing to kind of get karma points, but just to, you know, when I do this, O-sensei had his waterfall stuff, but I'm sure some days he just woke up and he just picked his sword up. And for him, it would be more like, oh. Because all the finer dimensions, they have their own vibrational rate. Okay, and so, boom. There's that beat or pulse, boom, boom, boom. And that starts to me, it's like the cells start to kind of vibrate, so they feel very alive but calm. So, you know, as you swing, you know, you oftentimes go on a spiritual journey. Okay, now most people, when they think spiritual journey, they get a little drifty, right? And those finer spaces exist, but also bringing those finer states into being, boom, right here. So for that reason, I kind of like just the simple sword cut. It's 2 movements, But then again, Stephen Curry, shots, 2 movements, Tadahata swing is really 1 movement. You know, that oftentimes, you know, the simple basic moves oftentimes are really good grounding, a root practice. Okay, anybody, let me see. Yeah, we're right about there. So let me put this here. Here, we'll go back. So, yeah, I kind of know that for example, the sense feel place is a real difficult one. I mean, I used to, you know, I got it, you know, when I started teaching in San Jose, it was still in the Do Sensei school. So I get invited to do the group sitting. They would sit in Mountain View. So I would drive all the way to Mountain View and sit with the group. And man, I was lost. It was like, what are they talking about? Yeah. So at some point, you know, just not just to start to kind of get the sense feel, but to also, okay, this is what's going on there. I think a lot of what O-sensei was talking about, kototama, is, you know, when you touch those deeper places, you speak initially from the direct experience of being in those places. And after a while, the place starts to speak through you. And that would be my sense of another way of examining O-sensei's term, kototama. There's sounds. Instead of going, I make the sound, so I begin to get out of the way. And the sound, I'm just sort of the intermediary between the sound and this world. And, you know, of course, that takes practice somewhat, but, you know, there's this thing where a lot of times we're just too afraid to say anything, which is, you know, part of the practice. Is you just do that gradually, okay? But you start to be able to verbalize. I know that what happened to Carlos once was, you know, he would go visit Don Juan in the desert, and Don Juan would put him in these situations which would put him in an altered state, a non-ordinary reality. And initially, you know, he'd go, what happened? And so what Don Juan told him is, well, right now, you don't have enough personal power to verbalize your experience. But says as you gather what he calls some personal power, you'll be able to verbalize. In fact, what Castaneda did, he turned all that stuff into some very lucrative books, right? The whole Don Juan sequence, the Carlos Castaneda books. Yeah, I mean, if you read them, they're very detailed journeys into what he calls non-ordinary reality, or what we might call, you know, the sense feel world, the hidden to the divine realm. And so initially, I understand if you go, I have nothing to say. Yeah, I understand. Me too, sometimes. But, you know, what happens is after a bit, you start to trust yourself a bit more, which is kind of what the personal power is. You know, personal power is we trust our own actions and our own ability, our own cognitive sense of what's going on. Now, this is cognitive. Well, it is on another level. You know, most people, their imagination works against them because these thoughts usually come out of fear, okay? And therefore, our imagination is kind of stifled because when we start getting into it, we get monsters or whatever it is. Well, what if that happens? Oh my gosh, you know? And sometimes you just gotta go, you gotta be very easy with it. And it doesn't mean that you you don't pay attention to what's going on here, in this reality, because a lot of times that finer reality will keep poking you if it wants to get your attention about something. Okay. So that part of it is understandable. So if you go, I've got nothing to say, I feel da 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 da. Yeah, I know, I've been there. Okay, now you can't shut me up. So, it's been a shift in about 4 decades. Most of the time, for example, this is not encouraged. Literally, Japanese culture, shut up. Do the form. Go your place. Okay. That's kind of one of the reasons I didn't stay there. I love certain people there and certain things there. It's just the culture was too stifling for me. Okay. Anyway, anybody with anything to bring up or share or? Okay.
Just that
Yeah.
I was amused by the universe. You got that phone call during the class when I'm constantly getting interrupted.
It's like your kids, I should, I usually try to, just turn the phone off, but obviously I forgot today. I just said, hey, if you're Social Security or something wanting to call me, I'll listen. If you're trying to sell me insurance or get me to do a donation, and then they shut up. That's, a lot of times I just answer it. Nobody says anything. I just go, And sometimes, basically the phone, before I answer it, flags it as spam. So,
the first time I saw that was wild. I'm like, this Monty Python sketch that led computer hackers to call it spam is now like showing up the word spam on my phone.
Yeah.
I got to wonder how the manufacturers of spam feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it helps their sales. Who knows? They say no publicity, no bad. Basically any publicity is good on some level, right? If you really want attention, you want publicity, right?
Sure, so, like Steven Seagal movies were great for dojo enrollment.
Yeah, they were actually. Maybe not for the right reasons, right? But they were.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, we did great during the Seagal thing. We had him over here because Robert Fraser and I were teaching a summer class. So he says, "Well, what should we do this year?" And I, kind of like some part of me said, "Oh, why don't we? Who should we invite this year?" I said, "What about Steven Seagal?" And so, what happened? See, a lot of times, what happens is an idea has some energy to it. And so what came up in my head was, so see, it was almost like a joke, right? Let's invite Steven Seagal. And what happened is Robert Fraser said, okay. And we knew of a certain person that had a connection to Seagal. And so we called that person. And, he was very thorough. If I was a person, for one reason, I'm going to talk to Steven Seagal. But Robert Fraser was a PhD in psychology, studied with O Sensei, and he had met Seagal once. So Seagal knew him. And so Fraser Sensei keeps making phone calls. And, it's getting to that time, you got to get the advertising out for the summer thing. We don't do summer things anymore. But it didn't look very good. Then all of a sudden I get a call from Robert Fraser saying, Steven Seagal just called and confirmed for our summer thing. I'm going, wow. See, that's a case of a wild imagining having some energy, right? It's like you get all these different trees in a forest with their roots kind of commingle, but really how the trees talk to each other is through these fungal links. And so as much as you have a tree and a forest and a root structure, there's the fungal links are kind of like energy. And that idea, as implausible as it was, has some energy to it. And so what happens is, you know, he was at the time married to Kelly LeBrock, the actress, and she was about to give birth. So it was going to be right around when the seminar was. And so the agreement was he would come if we rented a private plane for him to come in and fly out. So we did. And so, you know, it's about a 3-day seminar, and he's there on one day, like I think Saturday. It's pretty much his day. And so, you know, we go to the airport, and this plane lands, and he comes out, and he's dressed in a black leather jacket with his hair. He steps right out of, you know, the actual movie which had just come out, which was Hard to Kill, which had his wife Kelly LeBrock in it. And he comes out and he walks past us all like we don't exist. And I'm thinking, this is going to be bad. Then he comes back and introduces himself. And it actually was, in his own way, a really interesting and fun day. And he teaches a couple of classes, does a question and answer. We take him out. One of the dojo people at the time was the owner and running a restaurant called Eulipia on First Street. And so we have it so that, you know, we can take him, you know, from the class he teaches in the morning to lunch. And he brings the secretary that you know, basically looks like she's a movie star. I can't remember her name. She's really nice though. And so, you know, he's sitting in the front seat. We have one of the students, you know, volunteered that really classy car, you know, just to drive him there. And so Fraser Sensei and I are sitting, and the secretary's in the middle. And we're sweaty from class, and she's just very cool. You know, like you had 2 sweaty guys that worked out, you know, and there's Steven Seagal in the front seat. And so he's kind of staring around, and, you know, and he realizes that you know, we're kind of like wondering what he's doing. So he turns around and says, I'm just looking for evidence of gang activity in the neighborhood. And the dojo, well, the dojo was the Japantown location on 6th Street. That's one of the more memorable, you know, parts of that stay was actually Steven Seagal came. In fact, his class, you know, the whole seminar actually got filmed. And so it's on YouTube somewhere. You know, Steven Seagal, Aikido San Jose, and his opening move was the same as the opening move in what was it? The first movie. Was not Out for Justice. What was it called? It was like Above the Law. Okay.
Yeah, Above the Law.
Yeah, Above the Law, where he kind of goes and he bows in and turns around. And this guy that it was Suzuki was this man named Matsuoka Sensei. Okay, who's since broken from Seagal. But Matsuoka Sensei, you know, he has Matsuoka Sensei come as him, and then Matsuoka Sensei comes in real fast, getting lunch punch. And Steven Seagal steps to the side and clotheslines him. He does that a couple times. He goes, and then, you know, he kind of goes, okay, practice, you know. And then, you know, it was interesting, you know, because he came around a couple times. I actually uked for him a couple of times, but he just demonstrated more movement. He didn't like clothesline me, right? I talked to a couple of guys that he clotheslined. That was a big move in those days. What happened later was he actually put on so much weight that that clothesline movement became boom like that, right? But yeah, no, he was he looked literally like he came out of the movie Hard to Kill, and he was fun. And the other thing I realized, is just that as much as and he was very respectful. I mean, it was kind of the last thing he said. Before he went on the plane, he looked at me and said, "You do really good Aikido." I said, "Well, thank you." I wish it was recorded, I could put it on YouTube.
Yeah, sure.
I'm
But
kidding.
I mean, why should?
There's Steven Seagal, right? From Steven Seagal's stories. Yeah, so, I would have been. And one time, I'm teaching a noon class at the Japantown place, and this guy comes in Tibetan robes. And, those days, we used to actually get a pretty good audience. People, having just watching the class. It was, we got a lot of signups though. The street traffic was good. Yeah, Martha Street, the rent's better in Martha Street, but the actual exposure street traffic isn't. But this guy comes in Tibetan robes and watches class. So I go up to him. There's about 8 other people sitting because we used to have chairs like, you can watch the class. And I just asked him, hi, can I answer any questions? He says, no, he said, I was told to come here and watch. And I said, oh, really? By whom? And everybody heard it, Steven Seagal. I got everybody's attention.
Wow.
I don't think I got any signups from it, but that area, whoa, right? So that part of it was, no, he was, people, say he's this or that, but his Aikido is really good. I mean, literally, you may not like what he does with it, but his Aikido is really good. His understanding of energy, body movement, and the mental state of the art is what is really good. What you might have difficulty with is him. And that just seems to be the way it goes. A lot of times people that are very gifted, they have all these gifts and you look at them and you go, no, thank you. What I realized was, like Fraser Sensei, for example, he's really good at handling people like that because, he founded, what's now Sophia University. He started the first graduate program in North America in transpersonal psychology. He's used to all these high-powered people with big egos. And I do not do well with them. So I kind of knew, this is really a great one-day experience, but under no circumstances do I want this to become a regular thing, even though I had a great time. It was fun. We used to work on some of that stuff, that clothesline entry and stuff. And that part of it, I mean, if you say Steven Seagal, Aikido, and I say, yeah, he's really good. I don't like his politics. I guess he's living in Russia, he loves Donald Trump. I mean, that's called, it's called choice, it's democracy. But, part of the stuff with him is very Trumpian. It's just that he would sort of say that he had done things, or certain things were a certain case, and they just weren't, if you checked up on the facts. But, somebody like that, I mean, a lot of ways, I mean, and somebody that went to that workshop, the one we hosted, went to a much later workshop. And they said it was very different because he just came around, took photos with people, signed autographs, was very open. And the person that went to one of the later ones says, well, guess what? He comes in with bodyguards with guns. Yeah, because somebody's going to come in and try him out. So he had bodyguards with guns, got too famous. And, this tough guy, it's just like, yeah, somebody's going to say, well, I'm going to try you out, right? And so, yeah, it was very different. With us, it was very open. It was the second movie. And then, for a while, what he would do is put the movies out in very discrete times of release when nothing else was coming out. So it would be number one. And then, from the 3-word titles, right? Out for Justice. There's, after a while you go, okay, it's a 3-word title: Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Out for Justice, on Dangerous Ground. I just keep going. That was the last one. I went to one other one, and then I stopped going. And then he stopped actually making movies, except that go straight to video. And you can kind of get some of those on some of the streaming channels now. And he certainly, he had a sort of a mafia Italian fixation when he was with us, which seemingly has sort of become a Russian mob boss fixation in his later films, which I haven't watched, but you see clips here and clips there. And it's fascinating. I mean, guy has talent. I mean, I don't think he really can act, but he can play himself, and his Aikido is really very, very, very good. You might have, again, issues with what he does and how he presents it, but from personal experience, he's really good. And that's something you look at him and think, okay, yeah, he's top notch, right? And somebody who's about 6'3", 6'4", who at that time was young and athletic, hey, big guy. I mean, he goes to Japan and he runs a dojo there for a while. I'm sure he was tried out by a lot of people, but on the other hand, he's big. So after a while, they go, well, why try? Right? And it wasn't for lack of skill. I mean, I have no doubt that he had to be very sharp, even running a dojo, a school in Japan as a foreigner. Right? That can't have been easy. Okay. So all of that is that's an example. You get this wacky idea. Potential spam. See, the world, a lot of times when you're about to touch something deeper, oftentimes goes nuts. It just goes nuts. It won't leave you alone, stuff like that. So that, as they said, bad things, bad people, oftentimes they're part of training. So you learn to settle and open with them. Right? You can't do anything else with them because, when you start to touch something more original or get closer to the more original nature of yourself, the world goes crazy. Chaos, right? I mean, one of the reasons we don't so much support the Aikikai in Hombu Dojo. What we really support is the Ueshiba family. Okay? There's a personal tie to them. The front office, the politics and everything, for now, are secondary. I've had discussions with Nadeau Sensei about this, and we're very, very, very much in agreement on it. Now, the other divisions, but Nadeau Sensei was the direct student of Wo Sensei. He's the only one of the founders of the association that is still active. Okay. And what it is, I mean, if you can imagine what it's like, you know, you want to focus and your kids go crazy. I'm trying to do a class and I forget to turn the phone off and I get these stupid spam calls. When you start to touch that, one thing that comes up is chaos because there's so much energy to the under. And so at that point, you know, you open, you settle, and you stay on track. In fact, after a while, you know, it's somewhat of a road sign. Yeah, things have been so nuts lately. The last 4 years of Donald Trump, you're either a psychological mess or you're an enlightened master. Now, I haven't played that last part well enough to be that. But, you know, a tremendous amount of energy comes up when you do that. Gurdjieff, a spiritual teacher, said, the one thing you'll find is when there's real deep work being done, there's always chaos. The book, what is it? In Search of the Miraculous by Manny Uspensky was a record of Gurdjieff just pre-Russian Revolution when all this stuff was going on. And so, you know, we're living at a time, you know, where there is just real chaos, you know? You know, and sometimes, you know, what happens a lot is that you've got to be careful what you ask for. You know, because, you know, there's this pandemic, nothing's going on. And I'm a basketball fan, right? So I want more NBA news. I want to find out who the Warriors are going to draft and what they're going to do. So guess what? I get a lot of news, like Klay Thompson tears his Achilles. Ah. Okay, now I got news, didn't I? But you got to be easy with it. One door closes, another one opens. That door closes. They get the second pick in the draft. They get this guy, James Wiseman, who's 7'1". Sort of undeveloped, but what he did is he, through no fault of his own, there was a recruiting violation. So, you know, they were going to suspend him. And so he said, I'm not going to play any more college ball. I'm just going to prepare for the draft. So he did. So we don't know. He's a big question mark. A lot of people go, I don't know about Wiseman. But the Warriors were on him because, you know, I've seen him move on video and everything like that. So one door closes. You have to be somewhat fluid to tap the door that opens. You know, that's the sense field. Because what was like, you know, somebody put it this way, was the end of the world for the caterpillar is the beginning for the butterfly. And if you, in fact, there was a comic book called Howard the Duck. Yeah, and I think issue number 3 or 4 was Master of Quack Fu. And so there's this kind of evil martial arts master, Count Macho or somebody like that. And at the end of it, I can't remember the story now, but I do remember the punchline. Is that, you know, Howard wins or something, I can't remember, or Count Macho does himself in. And so Howard the Duck's comment on that is he died a caterpillar. You can be the richest caterpillar, the most publicized caterpillar, you're still a caterpillar. You never made it to butterfly. Right?
Trapped in a world he never made.
Yeah. So a lot of times, you know, that transformation place is, you know, for that reason, it pushes. And so I think one of the things those sensei wanted us to do was to realize that there are dimensions and dimensions. There is the upper, but the lower activates the upper. So it's not just a daydream. Yeah. If I were ever to meet Stephen Curry, I would go up to him and say, thank you for making my dreams come true. Not all of them, but being small and playing guard and seeing basketball being dominated by big guys and being small myself. And to be a Warrior fan where they were awful for years and years and did stupid things upon stupid things. So all of a sudden, you get this 5-year window. And so, it's not everything, but, in terms of like a certain aspect where you actually see yourself in him. I'm not him. If I had to trade, I would say I was still with me, right? But I would thank him for making a lot of my dreams come true. Yeah. Visualizing, if I had to create through my imagination, a player who would do this and that, who would elevate my pathetic local team into a global power. Those are my dreams. And all of a sudden, if I ever saw him, I'd just say, thank you for making those come true. Because in a sense, what happens is you can have the dream, but then to actualize it, even if it's actualized for you in another arena, is pretty big. I think Ueshiba Osensei's dream would be that we would, as a species, race, humanity, complete the journey and ascend to more our true nature, which is God or goddesshood. And we create here a heaven on earth, according to this design of universal harmony and love. But when you start to go that way, you get a push. It looks like to me, in pre-2016, we had a Black president. It looks like we're going to have the first woman as president. What comes up? Donald Trump. It's a push. So what are we going to do with that? Well, basically swear and, just think bad thoughts. So, I'm probably at the top of that list, right? But ideally, what we should have done was settle, feel, get in contact with the deeper realms. And cycles, light and dark, are going to go on forever. But the dark, a lot of times, is just the part of the light that brings the light into being. And so there's a push sometimes. So that's why that sense-feel area is important. You can do it without that, but as you kind of go deeper, it's not that you get pushed, but it's just that when that amount of energy starts to come through you, it's, and sometimes you get lucky, like that crazy Steven Seagal idea. I had no idea. It used to be that I would have crazy ideas and they would come to fruition. Lately, I'm talking about the last 2 decades or so, that's a superpower I don't seem to have. When I was younger, I'd come up with some crazy scheme and it would work. Somehow it would come to fruition. I have a group in Japan. We're at the Shingu school. We're supposed to go out on the morning train. We have taxis ordered. Everybody else in the dojo, people that could help, they're gone because they're going to do a demonstration somewhere else. Big event. It's up to us, get on the taxi, make it to the train station. So what happens? No taxi. I don't know what to do. So basically, I put my shoes on. I go outside. We're staying in the upstairs of the Shingu dojo. And I'm thinking, I got to make something happen. I don't know. Here we are at the dojo. Right around the corner is a major shrine. So part of me is like the force is guiding me, whatever it is. I run to that shrine, and there's somebody raking leaves. And my Japanese was good enough at that time. I explained the situation. And he says, I'll call a taxi for you. So I run back to the dojo and have everybody get ready. Guess what? He comes up in a car, says, I decided to do it myself. We cram all our stuff somehow in there. There's about 3 of us. We get in the car. He takes us to the station. We make it by the skin of our whatever. And so what happens is, I called Hikizuchi Sensei. And I explained what happened. And he said, yeah, I heard about it. Because you hear about stuff like that, small town. And I said, well, who was that guy? And he was the son of the chief priest of that shrine, which is a major shrine, the Hayatama Shrine. And so I found out that, the term for chief priest or head priest is Guji. And being the son of that shrine, priest, head priest, he was the Gonguji. And so what I did do is I went out and bought one of those really expensive travel books of Yosemite, because they like that stuff. And I sent it to the Shingu Dojo, and Hikizuchi Sensei, somebody else went, and I wrote some sort of a note of congratulations in Romaji, which is the syllabary. But it used to be, when I was a lot younger, that I could do crazy stuff and pull it off. And, you get, I don't know whether it's age or whatever it is, but I'm not as crazy as I used to be. In those days, it's like, well, it's like, okay, we're going to miss our train. What's going to happen now? We paid all this money, da-da-da-da-da-da. We're in a foreign country, and yeah, I can speak some Japanese, and I just ran out of the dojo knowing I had to make something happen for the group. And something pulled me towards that shrine. Right. And the expression in Japanese is called kan nagara, go with the flow of kami. May the force be with you. And so, that area where sometimes, when you actually have some sort of a pipeline between your idea and the actual realm of energy, where the energy comes up and activates your idea here and now. That's a lot of what Sensei was able to do. So, the floor cut we were doing at the end, so I can stay very, very floaty with it, which means I'll stay in the idea half, or I can just get in there and put that ability, boom, where you're actually utilizing the sense field, boom, and bring it into being here. That's a lot of what Sensei could do. He said it was a misogi, was getting the ordinary eye out of the way, where the more original or extraordinary comes in, but it comes in through us. And so the shugyo, the training, not just the training in the dojo, and the misogi, kind of getting the ordinary eye out of the way in a good way. Sometimes you get the ordinary eye out of the way and you get some sort of screwed up eye. That's the other thing, that the shugyo is to kind of keep you in alignment as you make that shift from, the ordinary eye to whatever it is, that activation from the energy, the kami, whatever you want to call them, and bring them into being right here. And, with the Steven Seagal thing and that crazy thing in Japan with the taxi cab that didn't come, those are instances, this was years ago. And I don't know, you get older, you get more used to ordinary disappointments and stuff. In those days, it was kind of like nothing's impossible. There was I used to, when I was playing basketball, pick up basketball at UC Santa Cruz. There were a couple of guys, there were guys that stood around the hoop and they would block your shot, and I'm small. So I would take those guys on. That was my challenge, right? And what I found out was that he played at UCLA. He was loyal center, but later he took the name Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he was getting fed up with the UCLA basketball scene. So guess what? He was contemplating moving to Santa Cruz, which was, more serious. He could study, not just be a jock, right? And I was thinking, oh my God, if he's on the floor, pick up basketball, and all of a sudden it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, what would I do? I'd take it to the hoop. It was just, I used to have all these crazy finishes. I mean, I didn't always win, but my big move was I would cross over and, I do a hook shot, right? But I'd go behind the backboard and loop it high off. It was like a Stephen Curry finish, And I would have tried that. It probably would have gotten the SWAT down. But hey, if you don't dream, you can't do it. But on the other hand, if you don't understand that there's somewhat of an activation from the lower energies that fill this out to make it a reality, we all stay very ordinary. Right? I mean, that's just the sad fact of it. Don Juan said you get trapped in ordinary reality. In fact, Nadeau Sensei and I, we had this talk yesterday. And the way Don Juan put it, there's ordinary reality, there's non-ordinary reality. We're a kid. Right there, there's a gateway and there's a guardian. As we get older, in other words, kids, they're all imagination. They're all, look at your kids, Cliff. They got all this energy, all of a sudden they become venture capitalists and what happens to them? Okay? But you see that the kid's here and there's a guardian here. So the guardian says, okay, you can go into your dreams. You can go into this other reality here. But the kids can't do anything with that reality. But they can be in it. But as we get older, the way Don Juan puts it, the guardian becomes a guard. So when you start to go into that, all of a sudden there's a guard there. That's why there's that push. So one of the things is, okay, when you feel that push, because it's immense, you settle, and oftentimes it'll send you a companion or ally. And then all of a sudden you kind of start to make that transition, but there's always that push. Anyway, I think what we're going to do is we're going to call it for today. It's a good session. I hope, again, it's me doing a lot of talking, so hopefully you got something out of it. But I think
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Bye-bye. Just say leave meeting.